All right. Well, we will get things kicked off today. Welcome to the March virtual presentation that we have today. We're joined today by Chris Sietsema from Teach to Fish Digital. We're really excited for him today. He's going to be presenting on the newest and latest and greatest when it comes to Google Analytics 4, something that we know is getting a lot of interest out there in the market. And we're really excited for today's presentation. Couple call outs before we hand it over to Chris. We want to thank our event sponsors, webranking.com as well as Web4. Go to web4.com for more information about those two wonderful partners of ours. And as well, we're excited to be continuing celebrating our new charity of choice, Elevate Oregon. Elevate Oregon is working to empower students across Oregon, particularly those in minority communities, to seek out future endeavors, especially in the digital marketing community, and going into increasing rates of college admissions. Go to elevateoregon.org for more information about their mission and how you can continue to help. As always, follow us on our social medias, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, always at SEMpdx throughout all those three platforms. Stay up to date with our updates. We're going to have some updates dropping soon about Engage Conference 2021, obviously our monthly events, and any membership updates that we have throughout the year. And then, of course, speaking of our membership, we're always excited to announce that we have moved our memberships throughout this COVID time to a free model. Go to SEMpdx.org/member to sign up for your free membership today if you haven't already. This gets you access to all of our events. This will get you onto our newsletter. This will keep you up to date with everything that we're experiencing here at SEMpdx as we look to continue out with our virtual events, and then always ensuring that our member base can stay connected, get into the Slack, continue the conversations with other digital marketing professionals in Portland and around the Pacific Northwest. But with that, I'm excited to announce that we are joined again by Chris Sietsema about his Google Analytics 4. I know he's got a big, huge, rich deck. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to him so he can kick off and we don't lose any additional time. Chris?
All right, thanks very much. Okay, let's get into it. So thank you very much for having me. My name is Chris. I'm coming to you from Mesa, Arizona, just outside of Phoenix. We're going to talk about Google Analytics 4 today. Just a little bit of information about me. What I typically do is provide analytics audits and configuration for both Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager, a little bit of work in Data Studio over the past year as well. And these are just a few of the clients that I've had the pleasure of working with over the past 6 months or so. Like I said, we are going to talk through Google Analytics 4. We're going to compare it to Universal Analytics or GA3, which you all are probably a little bit more familiar with than you are with GA4 right now. We will do a Google Analytics 4 walkthrough to kind of get you accustomed to that and get you familiar with all the different reports and features in there, and also provide you at the end of this deck with some action items for GA4 that you can execute on your own, for your organization, for your clients, etc. A few other notes before we get into it. GA4, as you've probably seen, is in development. They are literally trying to change the tire as they're going down the road at 75 miles an hour. And so if there are features in GA4 that you don't see just yet, just be patient, and they will be there eventually. A lot of changes have happened since they launched it in late October. So I'm excited to see how they continue to evolve this tool. You will have a copy of this deck. So it's a doozy. There's a lot of information in here, a lot of step-by-step instructions. So I want to make sure you have a copy of that, and that'll be good. We will talk a little bit about not only Google Analytics 4, but if you have familiarity with Google Tag Manager, that's good, because we're going to talk quite a bit about GTM or Google Tag Manager as well. If you're not, that's okay. We'll walk you through that and get you familiar with that tool as well, because they go hand in hand. And there's going to be a bit about Data Studio as well. The next point before we jump into it is an important one, because I think every time there's a new change in our industry in digital marketing, whether you've been involved in this industry for 20 years or 20 minutes, you know that things change, and they change too much. But the knowledge of the fact that they change doesn't help when they actually do change. So if you're trying to work through Google Analytics 4 and you're a little bit flustered or frustrated, it's not your fault. I just want you to know that, okay? It's not your fault. We're going to work through this together. You are in a safe space, okay? So back in October 27th last year, Google came out with a product update. By the way, if you do not subscribe yet to Google Analytics product updates, do so. Just Google Analytics product updates and sign up. You'll want to make sure you're on that because they come out with new announcements all the time. This was an important one on the 27th of October because during this product update, they introduced Google Analytics 4. Let's get a little closer look at that. Now, if you haven't been in here before, here's what it looks like. You'll notice that there's a lot more reports on the left-hand side than compared to Universal Analytics. They're breaking things down. Sometimes I think that they basically just not added reports, but just rearranged furniture in the room a little bit, because a lot of the reports that we're used to in Google Analytics, in Universal Analytics, the analytics version that you use now, are there. They're just kind of moved around a little bit. Okay, so let's kind of go back in time a little bit in history, kind of talk through how we got here. How did we get to Google Analytics 4? And if you've been in this industry a while, you probably remember GA Classic or analytics.js, almost kind of a souped up version of Urchin to get technical, okay? And it was pretty basic: visits, sessions, page views, bounce rate, nothing too crazy in the classic version of Google Analytics. And then some years later, they introduced Universal Analytics. You can see it looks like an upgrade. There's brakes on this thing now. That's good. They've got some suspension on this thing. And so Universal Analytics introduced enhanced e-commerce. It did better with cross-domain tracking. A lot of the features that we rely upon today for our own tracking or tracking things within our own organizations, or for our clients if we're on the agency side, we use now in Universal Analytics all the time. And now we're dealing with something new, something different, something much more evolved. Oh my, what is this thing? Let's get a closer look at this thing. Where are the wheels? Right now, if you've been in GA4, you're probably wondering, and had the similar reaction to I just had just now. It's like, what is that thing? This is so different than what I've seen before. And that's basically what Google Analytics is. Or Google Analytics 4, I should say. It's just totally different, and it's event-based. Let's talk more about that, what that means. So top of the line here, we're going to show you what the typical process would look like for tracking with the Google Analytics suite. We have a UA tracking code. You've probably seen this tracking code before. All the Universal Analytics tracking code starts with UA dash and then your own personal ID. And we would rely on, or we do rely on, Google Analytics to track all the metrics for our websites, sometimes our apps, etc. And we also rely upon Google Tag Manager quite a bit, or at least I do, and you probably do too. But Google Tag Manager allows us to introduce metrics or events for things like click tracking or downloads or form submissions or YouTube videos or scroll tracking and all those different types of things that we can utilize to customize the metrics and the reporting that we have in Google Analytics. And that's really important. Also in the suite, we have Google Data Studio. Now you can create your reports manually. You can use a tool like Domo or Tableau or Power BI or any of those tools. But Google Data Studio is basically a visualization tool that we can use to create dashboards. And we can also blend data. So for example, we can blend or mix data up between data from Google Analytics and Google Ads, for example, to blend that data together to create different metrics and show those metrics together in a single visualization, like a table or a chart or a graph. Okay. Now, let's take a look and see how this is a little bit different with GA4. With GA4, all those events that we would include manually or create with Google Tag Manager, a lot of them are already in there. So Google Analytics 4, thankfully, is already tracking things like PDF downloads and scroll tracking and video plays and form submissions and things like that to a degree. What they're doing is basically giving a modicum of information about what's happening on the website. But do we still need Google Tag Manager? Absolutely, we sure do. We don't necessarily need it to create those events per se, but we do need it to maybe provide a little bit more information, or to use a verb that's popular in this industry, to decorate our tags, decorate our tracking with additional details. So for example, if they clicked on a PDF, all right, which one? Where were they? What else did they do during that session? If they watched a video, which video did they watch? How far into did they get? Did they complete the video? Did they pause the video? All those different types of things. Now, from a visualization standpoint, we still have Data Studio. We can use Data Studio to a degree. If you've been in Data Studio with a Google Analytics 4 property or a data set, You might be a little frustrated. We'll talk about that and why that is in a second. But within Google Analytics 4, they have what's called the Analysis Hub. And the Analysis Hub allows you to create your own kind of reporting and dashboards that you can rely upon for your own metrics and keeping tabs on things, but you can also share with members of your team or your clients or others within your organization. So there's built-in reporting that's kind of like Data Studio inside of Google Analytics 4, and we'll show you that here in a bit. Okay. Now, when I talk about these metrics here that are kind of automatically included in Google Analytics 4, let's get a little bit more precise about that. No matter what, you're going to be tracking page views just like you can in Universal Analytics. You'll also be able to track scrolls, outbound clicks, so any click away from your website to another property or to another external site. Site search is automatically tracked. So if you've got a site search box on your website, you want to see what people are searching for, that's probably already tracking for you. Video engagement we talked about there, and then file downloads, okay? So you'll note that there's some advanced settings right up here for page views. Hopefully you can see my little mouse. And right down here for site search, you'll want to check those out when you create your Google Analytics 4 property. And I'll show you how to do so in just a second, because that will allow you to do some more advanced things. For example, if this is a little technical, but if any of you have a site that's kind of like a single page app site where you don't actually go from page to page, but you've got history changes, you can update the settings in that page view to actually track history changes throughout. And then for site search, you can also update the parameters or the little cues that Google Analytics relies upon to see what that site search was, okay? One of the biggest differences between Universal Analytics on the left and Google Analytics 4 on the right is the data model, okay? Let's unpack that a little bit. What does that mean? In Universal Analytics, there are several different hit types. There's 4 to be exact. There's page view hit types. There's event hit types, like the ones that we can create with Google Tag Manager. There's e-commerce hits, and there's also social interaction hits that are tracked within Google Analytics. And those are things like shares from your website to Twitter or Facebook or whatever. Here's the data model for Google Analytics 4. That's it. Just events. That's all we get. It's events only. Everything is an event. So there are no more page view hit types. There are no more e-commerce hit types. There's events that are called things like page_view or session_start. They're all hit types. Everything is an event. Okay. So just so we're not kind of confusing my vocabulary a little bit, let's talk a little bit about what hit types are. And these are specific to Universal Analytics. Now, we're going to look at some code here, so buckle up, all right? Make sure you're seated. Here we go. Right in here, you can see that I've highlighted the page view. And then there's some code right in there that says UA-XXX-Y. This is a sample page view tracking code, okay? And many of you have probably seen this before. Some of you, this might be new. But what this is essentially translated to is, hey, Google, send a page view data to a Google Analytics account or property. This is basically the page view hit type, okay? So when we talk about different hit types, there's different actually tracking codes for all of those different hit types we talked about back here, okay? So that's the Google Analytics page view hit type. Just another one real quick, just so we're all on the same page. There's a different tracking code for e-commerce with Universal Analytics. There it is, the e-commerce. And all this is saying is, hey, Google, send e-commerce transaction data over to Google Analytics so I can analyze how many products were purchased and how much they were purchased for, what sources provided those transactions, et cetera, okay? Now, we don't necessarily have different tracking codes with Google Analytics 4 because every hit is an event, every single one. Here's what they look like. Like I said earlier, this is kind of what they're looking like. There's a file download event. There's that offsite click event. There's user engagement, which is kind of nebulous and confusing if you've been in there. They've got all these different hit types. Everything is an event. So we don't have any more page views. We just have page view events, if that makes sense. Okay. So when that announcement came out, many of you probably saw it and flipped out like I did. And maybe you thought, all right, I was utilizing Google Analytics or Universal Analytics GA3. And I'm going down the road and I get that announcement from Google and I say, oh shoot, I've got to upgrade and I've got to change things. I got to go over here. I'm going to start using Google Analytics 4 exclusively. What I would say is if you did that, hopefully you didn't, but don't do that. Stop that process right now. What I would suggest instead is that while you might have a Universal Analytics property going right now, that's fine, let it go. You might have that thing going for the next 2 years, and that's perfectly fine. What we want to do is run Google Analytics 4 at the same time. So on your web pages, you'll probably want to have your analytics, your Universal Analytics tracking code, and your Google Analytics 4 tracking code. You're going to run them at the same time. They're both kind of tracking the same pages, the same website, the same client, campaign landing pages, whatever it is, but have them going at the same time. This is the preferred method right now, okay? 6 months from now, a year from now, you might decide, you know what? I'm good with Google Analytics 4. I don't need Universal Analytics anymore. I'm gonna go down at the bottom there and just use Analytics 4 exclusively. For right now, everybody should be doing parallel tracking, okay? Now, if you're not doing parallel tracking right now, that's okay. Let's figure out how to do that right now, okay? So throughout this deck, like I said, you're gonna have a copy of this, and there's gonna be step-by-step instructions. So it's a little technical, but hopefully we've explained things for you properly. And I'm gonna pause here in about 5 minutes or so for any questions you might have, okay? So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is when you're in your analytics account, whether you've got a GA4 property or just your analytics, your Universal Analytics account, go to the admin tab at the very bottom with that blue arrow, and then select create property, that blue button with the red arrow, okay? And you'll need edit permissions to do this. So hopefully you have edit permissions on your account to do so. And they're gonna automatically encourage you to create a Google Analytics 4 property. Okay, so you can type in whatever name you want for that Google Analytics 4 property, your name, GA4, XYZ company, whatever it is, pop it in there. Now, you'll note that if you want to, you can still create a Universal Analytics property. If you want to create a GA4 property and a Universal Analytics property for a new client or a new website, whatever it is, you can still do so. They don't make it easy though, do they? If you want to create a Universal Analytics property still, you'll want to go down to that Show Advanced Options button that's highlighted with the red arrow at the bottom, and just click on that, and it'll walk you through how to create a Universal Analytics property if you're not ready to go GA4 just yet. Okay, but you still need to create a new analytics property. The next step of this thing, they're just going to ask you for a little bit of information, what your industry is, the size of your company, what your measurement goals are, etc. And then you have a property, okay? But you're not quite done yet. The next step is to create a data stream, all right? So for Universal Analytics, and we're going to compare the two once again, because you're probably more familiar with Universal Analytics at this point. And if you are, you know that we've got kind of a process for creating these accounts. We've got accounts, and then within each account, we have a property. So you could have a property for your website, for another website, for your blog site, for your e-commerce site, whatever. You can have different properties in one singular account. And then from each property, you have a view, or maybe several views. Commonly, the best practice for Universal Analytics is to actually create 3 views per property. One in the middle there, we've got our filtered view, where we're kind of taking out our own internal traffic out or anything else we don't want to include. Then we've got a raw or a whole view that doesn't filter out anything. So it's an unfiltered view. And oftentimes it's not necessary, it's not a standard necessarily, but you can do it. I create a 3rd view, typically in Universal Analytics, for just test. So I can test conversions and filters and things like that before I carry them over to the primary filtered view. Now, with Google Analytics 4, it's kind of similar, but a little bit different. So we've got our account, our properties, but instead of views, we've got streams. And there's really only 3 stream types. You might only have 1 stream for your website, but the 3 stream types are right here: iOS, Android, and web. And that's all you get, okay? So one question you might have is, all right, I've got multiple websites. Should I include them all in one stream, or should I have multiple web streams? And I would say, if you can, and if it makes sense, get them all in one stream so you kind of track things all in one kind of in one view of your analytics and of your data. So you might have your blog and your primary website and your e-commerce store. Get them all in there if you can, if it makes sense to do so. So you can kind of track movement between different properties or different subdomains, etc. If not, I would create a separate property. If you have actually a totally different website that you're tracking separately, you have to create a separate property for that. So GA4 main website, GA4 secondary website at the property level. I hope that makes sense. But what you want to avoid doing is creating multiple web streams within a property, just because it can get very messy. If you've ever seen Ghostbusters, this don't cross the stream joke writes itself, okay? So again, one property one stream per property, okay? All right. Now, let's set up a web stream, for example. You can see I've got that highlighted right there. This is a web stream, what it looks like, okay? So you click on that web stream button, and then you basically tell Google Analytics, hey, here's the website URL I'm gonna track. Here's the name of that stream. And then you can choose to include those automatically tracked enhanced measurements or events like scrolls and file downloads and videos and outbound clicks and all those different types of things. If you want to edit that, you certainly can with that checkbox right there, or that gear icon right there, okay? Next, so if you do check that, again, check out your advanced settings for page views and site search. Chances are the default are perfectly fine, but when you get in there, you'll want to check those out a little bit and make sure that they're looking okay, okay? All right, just a couple more minutes and then I'm gonna stop for questions before we get into some more advanced level stuff in GA4. When you've got your web stream ready, after you kind of set that all up and you're ready to go, you hit that create stream button right there. What you'll see is a screen that looks like this. Now you'll want to take note of your measurement ID as opposed to UA-blah, it's GA- a number of numbers, and that's your measurement ID for that particular property. And now it's time to actually place the code on your website and have that parallel tracking going, those two streets going at the same direction. And the way that we can do this is either with just slap that code right on your website, on every single page of your website. Maybe you've got a plugin that you can do that if you're using WordPress or some other content management system, some module, for example, or we can use Google Tag Manager to do that. Okay, we can use Google Tag Manager to place both our Universal Analytics page view tag and a separate Google Analytics 4 tag. Okay. Now, if you'd like to use GTM, let's talk about how to do that. If you're not familiar with Google Tag Manager, I'm going to give you the quick and dirty overview. Okay. Back in the day, let's say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I'm not a developer by trade. So anytime I would have to place a new retargeting tag or a conversion tag on a website, I have to go to a developer and say, hey, developer buddy, can you please place these tags on these particular pages? And hopefully a couple weeks later that would happen. With Google Tag Manager, we essentially have not a separate analytics tag and AdWords tag and Facebook tag and crazy egg tag and hotjar tag all on our website, but we have one container tag. And that bucket or that container just goes on the website. And as opposed to placing every single tag for every one of these on the site, you place them in the container. They all go in the bucket. And as long as you've got that container code on your website, you can control what tags are firing on which pages from a separate interface called Google Tag Manager, okay? It looks a little like this, all right? So now we're gonna walk through really quickly, again, it's a little technical, but we're gonna walk through very quickly how to actually create a GA4 tracking tag. Here we go. We're going to go into Google Tag Manager and hit that add a new tag button right there with a blue arrow. We want to name our tag. I'll just call it GA4 or GA4 page view. And then to configure it, they don't have the best usability in GA4, but if you look for that little pencil icon right there, you'll find that and click on that. And the settings you want to select or the tag type is GA4 configuration. There's a few different in there. There's one for Universal Analytics. There's one for GA4 configuration. There's one for events. Select the GA4 configuration just for the primary tag. And typically when you have a tag in Tag Manager, you have a set of instructions, or in our parlance, a trigger. And the trigger just says, here's when I want you to fire this tag. And this is the most basic trigger of them all, just fire it on all pages. Then you save that trigger and off you go. You publish your container and now you are tracked. It's that easy. It hopefully takes 5 minutes from start to finish, okay? So I'm gonna pause there for a second. Any questions so far? Anything on the chat? Anything we need to clarify? All right, I'm not hearing anything, so I'm gonna keep going. We're gonna get a little bit more advanced here as we go, okay? So the next step that I would recommend, and this is probably a few days after you implement your GA4 tag, is hopefully you've got your Universal Analytics property still going, your Google Analytics 4 property going now. They're running in parallel paths. You got parallel tracking or dual tracking going. It's time to compare the data. And what we're looking for here is big significant deltas, big differences in the data. If we've got users 2.6K in Universal Analytics and 2.5K in Google Analytics 4, that's no big deal. That's nothing to worry about. What we're concerned about is we see 2.6K users in Universal Analytics and not 2K, but just 2 users, or 10,000 users in GA4. So look for the big differences. If you do see some changes that or if the data is not identical, that's okay. That's probably good because it shouldn't be. Number one, you'll probably see less users. And that's because Google Analytics 4 is done a better job of actually identifying and recognizing individual users, okay? And so it can tell that if I'm coming to the website on my computer or my wife's computer or my phone or my kid's phone or whatever, it does a better job of that, which is excellent. You might see some more sessions, and that's because the primary reports within Google Analytics do not rely on data sampling. Data sampling is an operation that is utilized by Universal Analytics to basically sample or take a portion of the data and then extrapolate in reports, which is not that helpful because it can be somewhat misleading. The primary reports, almost all of the reports within GA4 do not rely on sampling. So you might see some more sessions in there because we're not sampling as much. And then lastly, you might see some more new users only because the moment you start tracking things in GA4, everybody's a new user to GA4 anyway. So you might see some more new users there. So if you see these types of things when you're comparing the data, that's probably just fine. All right. All right. Now that we've got our tag on there, let's have some fun in here and start creating some events, or at least modifying some events. Okay. So as I stated, some default events you might see in there already, or when you started utilizing GA4, are page view events, first visit, scroll, click, file, download, all different types of things. Now, some of these events can be actually categorized into 4 different event types or 4 different categories. Here they are. There are automatic events that are just automatically tracked no matter what. An example of that is GA4 is always going to track every page view no matter what. There are enhanced events, what we talked about earlier, and these are probably going to be tracked as a default as well. Everything you see above the orange line is pretty much default tracking. Everything you see below the orange line can be pulled into 2 different categories. One is recommended, or those that are suggested by Google based upon your industry. So they have suggestions for retail and travel and education and different types of industries. And I've got a link in this deck to all their documentation about what those are. But some of them, for example, are like add to cart, select item, generate lead, those types of things. Whether you're doing e-commerce or lead gen on your site, doesn't matter. There's an event type for you. And then custom. And these are absolutely unique to you, to your client, to your organization. We're most likely going to have to create these. And I'll give you some examples as we go here, what we're looking at. Okay. So this is where it gets a little complicated. So I want to provide kind of an analogy to kind of help us through this a little bit. Again, you're in a safe space. This is a cake. It's a very boring cake. There's not much going on there, right? So your typical events out of the box as a default are kind of like this very boring cake with no frosting, no decorations on them at all. This is just a page view. Nothing going on here. All right. To every event, we want to attribute parameters. Parameters is a fancy word for extra stuff, extra details, okay? And for the purposes of this metaphor, they're decorations, okay? And so when people access a page view event fires. But we're bringing in additional data or decorations on our cake, such as page location, page title, page referrer, the language of the visitor, et cetera, et cetera. All these are decorations on our very boring cake, which is subtly not so boring. It's kind of a pretty cake all of a sudden, okay? So again, to kind of compare the differences between Universal Analytics and Google Analytics 4, what we typically are trying to get to is a fully decorated cake, right? We want all our events, whether it be click tracking or file downloads or form submissions and podcast listens and all the different events we want. But because we have to utilize Google Tag Manager and these events are not default, or they're not present in Universal Analytics by default, we have to create them from scratch. And when I say create them from scratch, we are literally creating them from scratch. We're not talking about a blank cake. We're talking about sugar and flour and milk and eggs and everything. This is the old school way of doing it, okay? And so here's a sample document that I provide my clients, for example, when we're configuring events, we write everything down. All right, so here's all of our tags. Here's a description of what the tag is doing. Here's one that tracks PDF downloads. Here's one that tracks clicks tracks scroll behavior, etc. And then all the event category action labels, all the trigger details, we write it all down, and typically it's in a Google Sheet. If we don't write it down, it doesn't exist. I'm going to say that again. If you don't write it down, it does not exist, because along with all your configuration in GA4, do yourself a favor, write that crap down. Because if you start going and start building things, you might forget what we created. And it could be, let me back up. Google Analytics 4's greatest strength is its flexibility. Google Analytics 4's greatest weakness is its flexibility. We can create Frankenstein very quickly here, as we can with Universal Analytics. So this is just an example of a document that we created for Universal Analytics to track all the different events. This is all the sugar and the flour and the milk and the eggs. Okay, we're creating things from scratch. Now with Google Analytics 4, again, we want a fully decorated cake. But typically we're starting with something that's baked, just not decorated. And so what we utilize is Google Tag Manager to add decorations or add details to those events so that we can get a little bit more explicit about the behaviors that our visitors are taking on the website or on our app or whatever it is, okay? All right, so in terms of events and parameters, or again, event is like the cake, parameters are the decorations. Here's some examples. Cake on the left, decorations on the right. Event name is page view. This event's going to fire every time a page loads. And some sample parameters are what's the page location, like what's the URL, and the page referrer. What is the referring source or the page that brought traffic to that page? Another one, an event would be scroll. And that would be when the user reaches the bottom of the page. And that would be an event parameter. There would be % scroll. The value of that parameter would be 50%. 100%, etc. So every parameter has a certain value or detail associated with it. There are events for videos, so that the Google Analytics 4 automatically will fire things like video start, video progress, video complete, and they will bring in details like, all right, what's the title of that video? What's the URL of that video? And these are all for like embedded videos or embedded YouTube videos that start playing and then complete. The last one is click right here. And for this one, it's kind of misleading in my opinion, because it's not a click on like on a button on the website. It's a click away from the website. Okay, so a user that clicks a link that results in an exit. And for that type of behavior, we have parameters or decorations like, all right, what link did they click? And what was the domain? What was the URL? What was the link class? If you're into tracking styles and things like that. Okay, so let's focus on that one for a second. That click, I don't like that one at all. Because it's a little bit misleading, like I said. I'm going to rename that. So within Google Analytics 4, if you've got events that are tracking right now and you're not in love with how they're labeled or how Google Analytics 4 has kind of provided those for you as a default, you can modify them. All right, so we're going to go to the Events tab in GA4, and we're going to modify our click event. Okay, so if you click on that red arrow right there and click on Modify Event, again, you're going to have a copy of the deck. This is what you get. And it's basically kind of a blank configuration screen. And if we fill that in, you can see that we can name our modification or the modification that we're making. And we're going to say, hey, Google Analytics 4, if you see any event name that comes through that's labeled click, that's misleading. Let's call that click_external instead. So you can basically rename the events or make sure that they match your parlance or your vernacular, so that they're tracking the way that you want them to. And you can do that for anything. I'm not suggesting you do that for everything, but that's an option for you, okay? Now, let's also say that you want to create an event. Now, there's two ways to create an event. You can create an event within GA4, and I'll show you how to do that in 1 second. And you can also do that in Google Tag Manager. We're gonna walk through that as well. Let's say we want to create a new event. We're on the Events tab right here, once again, and you'll see a big blue button that says Create Event. Okay, and so for this one, let's say I'm working with a real estate company where they've got a number of their real estate agents on a page that's called Find an Agent. Okay, so I want to track, that's kind of an important page for me. Anytime someone goes to that Find an Agent page, that's something that I want to track that maybe Google Analytics doesn't track as a default, or I want to call that something different. So I'm going to name my new event find_agent. Now, one call out here is you'll note that every event you've seen so far is all lowercase. They don't use dashes, they use underscores. You can use uppercase, you can use spaces between the names, but you want to remain consistent throughout. And because Google Analytics has kind of some existing events in there already that are all under lowercase and all use underscores, I'm going to follow their lead on that. Okay. So in this particular one, I'm saying this is a new event. I want to call it find agent. And this event happens every time that there's a page view where the page location contains find an agent. So we could call this, let's say we went to the contact us page. We could call this contact_us, page view, page location contains contact us, or whatever it is, right? So the world is your oyster here in terms of how you can create new events, and you can create those to basically benefit your measurement needs, okay? All right. And again, we're just baking cakes, we're decorating here, all right? Now, sometime later in the events report, you'll note that all of a sudden this find agent, this is specific to this particular property that I'm on. You won't see this unless you create it, but once you create that event, it'll say, oh, okay, looks like somebody went to that find an event page. So I'm going to call that a find agent event. And it looks like in the time since I created that, there's been 169 of those that happened, okay? So you can track all those in there, all right? So those are two ways you can modify or create events within GA4. But let's say we want something even more specific, something custom to us, okay? In this case, we're gonna have to use Google Tag Manager if we want to create new events. So for those folks that I've already talked about GA4 with, not necessarily SEMpdx, but other folks that I've chatted with about GA4, there are two takeaways. A, that person needs to know more about GA4, and B, that person really needs to know more about GTM or Google Tag Manager. So if you're not familiar with Google Tag Manager yet, get familiar. And I'm happy to chat with you about GTM, or I've got tons of training materials I can send you guys as well as this deck on GTM, but let me know. I'm happy to do that. All right, so Tag Manager, once again, this is our bucket in which we're including all these different tags for analytics and Hotjar and LinkedIn, anything we want, we can place a tag there. And typically there's three types of tags we utilize for GTM. One is our Google Tag Manager. One is add audience tags, so like remarketing tags, basically. Conversion tags, if you do Google Ads, you probably place conversion tags before, and then custom event tags. So this last one, this third one here is what we're going to create now, okay? Now, there is a little bit of a difference between event tagging in Universal Analytics, if you've done this before, and Google Analytics for events, okay? And by the way, if you're tracking with us, we were at level 100 about 5 minutes ago. Now we're at like GA4 level 300 or 400. We're getting a little bit more advanced here, okay? So event tracking parameters in Universal Analytics look a little like this. You've got event categories, event actions, and labels. Now, if you go in your Universal Analytics account to the events report, you'll see that those look a little like this. If you go in events and top events, you'll see event category, action, and label. That's where all of that data is fed. If you've got analytics, or I'm sorry, if you've got events feeding your analytics account already. Okay. Now, for GA4, there's no standard. There's no categories. There's no actions. There's no labels. Now, you can copy this same framework in terms of tracking categories and actions and labels if you want. So category, PDF, action, download, label, click text, whatever PDF they clicked on would be the label there, right? But you can also have a lot more freedom to include just one parameter or 3 parameters or 17 parameters, as many as you want. I think that there's actually a limit. Actually, I think it's like 20. But you can, again, very flexible in terms of the amount of data that you're bringing in and how you're decorating your cake, okay? So let's take a look at this for a second. In Google Tag Manager, as I stated earlier, there's a few different tracking types or tag types. There's the old school Universal Analytics tag type with the blue arrow. That red arrow is pointing to the GA4 configuration, the tag we just created when we added our GA4 tag to our website for the first time. Now, once you've got that GA4 configuration in, you'll never touch that tag again. Every other GA4 tag you'll utilize is probably going to be this GA4 event tag type in which we're creating new events, okay? So let's say that I've got a client that has like an embedded podcast player on their website, and they want to track how many times people are playing that podcast. Okay. So I'm going to create an event with a GA4 tag type and call it podcast_listen. Again, lowercase, no dashes, but underscores, just kind of keep them consistent. Okay. And I'm not going to go through the detail of what this looks like on the trigger side, but just know that for every tag that we place, we have to have a trigger that says, hey, Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager, fire this tag when someone clicks on that play button within the podcast player. Okay, and that's all feasible. So we want to configure that trigger. Now, this will work. It'll track an event called podcast listen, just like we had that find agent event from a moment ago. But I want a little bit more there. I want some more detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add event parameters. So if we back up a little bit, this event parameter option right there, click on that puppy, and then you can add rows to your event for additional parameters. And I want to know certain things like, all right, there's a number of pages on my client's website where you can play a podcast. What page were they on? Which podcast did they click? Both the link and the title. So these are parameters that I'm creating from scratch. This is almost kind of like our milk, eggs, and sugar and flour, right? And so here I've got the parameters. Here I'm using variables within Google Tag Manager that are telling me page location. Oh, that's page URL. So this is a dynamic variable that's going to bring data about whatever page that they were on into my event and into Google Analytics 4 so I can analyze that data. Okay. For the podcast link, I've just got click URL. Some of these variables in Google Tag Manager, if you're familiar with Google Tag Manager, you've seen these before. If you're not, just know that you can enable these events, that these are ready to go as a default within Tag Manager. And then this JS podcast title, that's some custom JavaScript that I wrote to actually scrape the podcast title off the page and tell me what podcast that was. I'm not going to show you that script because it's custom to this particular client. It wouldn't be relevant to you, but just know the point of that is that there are some variables that are ready to go by default. There are other variables within Google Tag Manager that you can create based upon CSS class and JavaScript and page titles and all different types of things. Okay. So once again, we've got parameters that are associated with every event. On that one, I added 3. For every event that fires, this is pretty important. For every event that fires, there are standard parameters that are automatically decorated. So these decorations will be on every event no matter what, whether it's a default event or if it's a custom event. Okay. So one of those standard parameters is page location. So any event, whether it's a video or a file download or a scroll, it'll tell you what language the user utilizes, what page they were on, the referrer, the page title, the screen resolution, all that stuff. These 5 right there. Now you'll note back at my tag for podcast listen, I actually had a parameter called page location. It turns out because this is a standard parameter right here, I don't need it. I can actually modify this tag a little bit because this is automatically collected here. I don't need to add a parameter that automatically is going to be included. So I'm only going to add podcast link and podcast title. Okay. Now, this is really important. If you create new events and you define new parameters, you not only have to kind of define them here, but you also, within Google Analytics 4, we're out of GTM now, we're back in Google Analytics 4, you have to tell Google Analytics 4, hey, by the way, I'm gonna be bringing in some new events, and they're gonna have some parameters that are associated with them that I want you to track. Google Analytics 4 will not know to track podcast link or podcast title in this case unless I tell it to. How do I tell it to? I define the parameters, okay? And you do that down at the bottom of Google Analytics 4, custom definitions. I want to hit that create custom definition box right there, and it will allow me to say, hey, Google, I've got a new parameter. It's called podcast title. Here's the description, and here's what to look for, okay? So every new parameter that you create or introduce, you'll need to create a custom definition or a custom parameter, okay? I'm going to pause there for a second because we've been going through some advanced stuff. I want to make sure this makes sense to everybody. Any questions so far? Good, good, good.
There are a couple,
Okay.
but we can save those till you get wrapped up because
Okay.
we have about 12 minutes before the end
Okay.
of the hour.
I'll wrap up in about 7 or 8 minutes. We should be good.
Works for me.
Okay. So hopefully this makes sense. You'll want to create any new parameter you introduce via Google or Google Tag Manager, define it, make sure that Google Analytics knows to look for it, right? So I created both podcast link and podcast title. Now, when people click into listen to a podcast, for example, that detail for what podcast they listen to, the link and the title will be associated with that data. Okay. And there's my adjusted tag. Again, I took page location out of there because I don't need it. It's automatically included. All right. Now here's another one for you. Let's say that I want to track forms, right? And here's just kind of a generic contact us form. And my boss says, hey, Chris, it would be really nice if we knew the definition or the value that people entered for those 4 fields right there. I want to know what state they entered. I want to know industry. I want to know service that they're interested in. And I also, even though this is an optional field, we don't have to fill it in, but I want to bring the data into how they heard about us into Google Analytics. These are going to be values within Google Analytics 4. And that's really no problem, right? So all we need to do there with Google Analytics 4 is make sure that these are parameters that we're associating with a new event called generate lead, right? So I'm just going to create a new event called generate lead. And for this particular one, I'm going to introduce new parameters like lead type. This is a static value right there. This is a contact form. So the lead type is going to be just contact right there. And then every single one of these variables for state, industry, service, origin, all those fields that I want to pull in, I'm creating variables in Google Tag Manager. So I'm writing some script, document dot, get element by ID, state field, or whatever it is, right? So, and that's super advanced stuff. Again, I would show you that script, but it's native to that particular client. If you have questions about how to pull that, I'm happy to answer those for you or take a look at something for you if you want. But you can pull all this information in and decorate your new generate lead with detail about the fields that people entered in their form when they fill it out. And this again is going to fire on a form confirmation trigger or form submit trigger. Okay. So again, because lead type, lead state, lead industry, service, etc., these are all new. I've just introduced these. I've got to go back to my custom definitions and add every single one of them. All right. Take the time here to add descriptions, because if there's more than one person, namely you, that's in Google Analytics 4, eventually they'll want to know, like, what is lead service? What is that? So you can provide a description right in there. So you're kind of documenting within GA4 as well. Okay. So the purpose here is we want to decorate as much as possible and get all of our events in a state that even Paul Holly would be proud of the good bake that we've done. Okay. All right. Now we've got some events created so far. I realize that there's questions we're going to wrap up here soon. One of the big questions is, hey, how do we kind of note that some of these events are more important than others, and that some of these events just aren't events, but they're actually conversions? Okay. Good question. It's pretty easy. They've actually made this part extremely easy. Everything else is kind of difficult up to this point. But if you want to mark a very specific event as a conversion, go to events. This column right here, mark as a conversion, just slide that guy right over, and voila, generate lead is now a conversion. Okay. So it'll track as conversions, and that can be pulled through to different visualizations here. Now, I'm going to skip this next part because I know that we're running low on time, and I've got plenty of slides to show you. But these are examples of before and after events for what the event might look like in Universal Analytics and what the event might look like in Google Analytics 4. Just know that this is specific to me. You'll want to create your own kind of parlance, your own naming conventions for all this. But here's an example of what an FAQ selection might look like. And again, I need to define that parameter for whatever item that they selected on FAQ. Again, I'm going to skip through this a little bit. Social media visit. Let's say that we want to track all the people that click on our Facebook link and go to Facebook, or our Instagram page and go to our Instagram page, or our LinkedIn company page. We can do that and bring all that through. I'm going to create an event called social visit. And again, over here, this is what the event might look like in Universal Analytics for events, and the translation to GA4. okay? And then video, there's all kinds of stuff in here. I'm gonna skip through this because typically you don't need to create new video events because Google Analytics 4 will automatically do that for you, okay? Now, if you want to make sure that some of these events that are firing by default, you can go into the debug view. If you're in Tag Manager and if you're in GA4, you can preview your Tag Manager and it'll show you as you go through in debug view what events are firing as you kind of walk through. So you can walk through your website, click on forms, click on PDF downloads, watch videos, etc., and just make sure they're tracking. If they're not, you can configure the events. If they're already tracking, you're done. You're done. You might need to decorate them a little bit, but you're probably good to go. Okay. The last piece of this is all about data visualization. All right. So how do we get the data that's in Google Analytics 4 and make it pretty? All right. There's two ways to do this. One is with Google Data Studio to a degree. I'll show you why it's a little bit limited here in a second. And then the Analytics Hub. Okay. The Analytics Hub is built within Google Analytics 4. Real quick on Google Data Studio, if you've never used it before, you'll want to create a data source for Google Analytics. These are all the different sources, for example, that you can automatically create as a data source to create a visualization in Data Studio. Google Data Studio is very good at integrating with pretty much every tool that starts with the word Google. All right, so Google Analytics, Google Ads, Google Sheets, Google Search Console, et cetera, et cetera. The one it's not too good at is Google My Business, which some of you might have found out the hard way. YouTube, you can integrate there. If you have a different integration with Data Studio, with like a Facebook or Bing ads or whatever, that's actually can be done through a separate integration with a data connector. That's a different topic for a different day, but that's all feasible as well. So to start with GA4, you'll want to create a data source. Here I'm in data sources, create that data source, select Google Analytics, name your new data source, and then configure your GA4 source. And you should be able to bring in some data. It's kind of a tease though, I will be honest with you, because if you use Google Data Studio now for your Google Ads reports or your Google Analytics reports, there's a lot of information readily available for Universal Analytics. For example, there are dimensions and metrics. Dimensions are basically the types of things we measure, like pages and channels and sources and things like that. Metrics are units of measurement, like page views and visits and events and things like that, exits, whatever. There are 513 dimensions and metrics for Universal Analytics in Data Studio. In GA4, there's 90. It's not good. It's not ready. This again, to use another metaphor, this is like if Vin Diesel was going down the road at 75 miles an hour. He's not driving the car. He's actually getting out to change the tire in GA4, right? So they're still in development. There's still a lot of work to be done. So if you don't want to use Data Studio right now for your GA4 reports, I get it. It's kind of difficult. However, you can use the Analysis Hub. It's all in here, so you can see right there. Now you'll note that there are a lot of different reports above here. Everything above the orange line are more like diagnostics. Like, is my tracking working? Are things coming through? Are my metrics being collected? All that type of thing. If you want to do real data analysis, I wouldn't really rely on any of these reports. They only kind of tell you what's happening within the past 30 minutes, which is a tease, right? It's not very helpful. If you want to see what happened last month or last week or earlier today, use the Analysis Hub. And these are just a laundry list of questions that you might want to answer, okay? So within the Analysis Hub, I'll just show you real quick. There's a number of different templates that you can create. They're awesome, by the way. So if you want to do like funnel analysis and path analysis, things that were kind of lacking in Universal Analytics, well, they're here in GA4. GA4 is not quite ready, but these reports are fantastic. The rest of these slides, just FYI, I'm not going to go through them, but take time with them because they're going to walk you through step by step about how to create something in the Analysis Hub. I'm sorry, I ran out of time, but I wanted to get to questions here as well. And I can hang out for a few extra minutes too if anybody's got some questions about some of this stuff. But the last few slides, again, you're going to have access to all this, are going to walk you through how to do some of these reports within the Analysis Hub. Okay. All right, I'm going to pause for questions. Anybody have any questions?
Well, Chris, I want to I want to thank you immensely. I mean, more than anything here, I want to thank you in person. This has been great. And when we scheduled you way back at the end of fall, I think it was, I was wanting it sooner. And I think a lot of people were. We have some really good questions. And I'm going to go through them. And if that's okay with you,
Sure.
and keep you as long as we can possibly milk you and exploit you.
Let's do it.
To those that have to go because you're on a hard stop, well, sucks to be you.
Sorry.
But you're gonna get the recordings, and members get access to the video library so they can watch this at any time.
And these are some quick links within the deck as well, just to provide some references from Google that I relied upon a lot when creating this deck and when configuring reports for myself and for my clients. So just know that everything's in the deck. This thing is monstrous. It's like 93 slides, hence why I took it to the end of the time here. But and feel free to check out the deck.
Did everybody see that the link is in the chat to your deck already? You went ahead and prepared that for us. And so if anybody missed it, scroll up. So the first question was by Ben Lloyd, and then there was a similar question. So do you have any advice for upgrading like this at scale? Each customer has their own Google account, and a lot of the third-party e-commerce partners aren't ready. And Jennifer Garza asked if you can share custom events between properties. You know, let's say they have 50 different real estate agents and want to track the listing agent for all. Will you really have to create that? She didn't say really, I did. Would you have to create that event for each account and property? And then my tag on was, seriously, is it really a manual process, this each and every account?
The answer to that is I don't know, but I'll find out. So I was wondering the same thing. I know that you can, from what I understand so far, again, this baby's brand new. From what I understand so far, you can export data out of Google Analytics 4 and import it as well. However, I'm not quite sure if that relates to parameters and custom definitions and event names, etc. One thing you could potentially do is, because most of this stuff is done with the tag manager level, at the tag manager level, in terms of creating events, you can absolutely copy and paste containers and that kind of thing. So I would definitely do that. What was the first part of that question?
Any
scale?
Yeah, scaling. Any advice for upgrading installs at scale?
Yep. So one would be, I don't have it written out here, but probably in the day 10 to 30, along with creating events and custom dimensions and designating conversions, etc. Create a schema. That spreadsheet that I showed you earlier. If I can, I'll create a sample one and send it to you guys so you can check it out. But it's difficult to create one that's going to fit everybody because it's so custom, yeah. You know. But I would absolutely write it down. And the same kind of thing, I believe that I know that you can import and export data. I just don't know if you can import and export those different values and events and custom dimensions, etc. But I'll find out. And if that's the case, that's going to be a lifesaver for all of us, I think.
Yeah, no kidding.
Quick note. And on the scale piece too, really rely upon the variables within GTM that auto-populate. So the least amount of work you have to do to manually do things, the better. So for example, I showed you an example of the podcast one. And I think that the parameters were podcast title, podcast, URL. For that, I might change it to like content title, because then if it's not specific to podcast, I could use content for PDF downloads, video views, podcasts, anything else where I'm interacting with content, marketing materials on my website. So there might be a way in terms of your naming conventions and the labels that you use to do kind of a catch-all and have the values or the variables kind of tell you, oh, that was a podcast, or oh, that was a PDF download, or oh, that was a download of a guide or whatever. You know what I mean?
One of the things, sorry, I should get to everyone's questions. So Michael Romano asked, and you kind of went over reporting at the end. And I think that probably answers his question about reporting, is that Data Studio is going to get better. But custom dashboards was asked about by Stacey McCormick too. she says she liked the custom dashboard feature in Universal Analytics. And have you got other advice beyond Data Studio, besides wait till Data Studio is better?
The analysis hub is basically the translation of the custom dashboard. So what you're used to in Universal Analytics with the custom dashboard, that's all in the analysis hub.
Okay, good.
And it's a little bit different in terms of configuration. And I wish we had more time to show you all those different things, but the deck walks you through how to create some samples. Similar to custom dashboards, they are unique to you. So if you create them, they're owned by you, but you can share them with other members of the organization or clients or what have you. So they could actually take the place of like reports. I believe you can schedule them, if you want to schedule, all right, send this report to my client at 9 a.m. on Tuesday or whatever, you can do all that. So.
Have you got any insight? Will McCall asked about GDPR and the California privacy rules and all the others that are rolling our way. Are there any concerns, and do you know how GA4 is dealing with that?
Yeah, so I don't think it's a coincidence that GA4 was introduced like shortly after or right around the time that Google also made an announcement regarding cookies and Chrome updates, right? Coming next year, I think it is. You guys probably know better than I do, considering your focus on search. But does Google Analytics 4 rely upon cookies? Yep, it sure does. Does it necessarily need to all the time? No. I think that as we spoke about here, let me back it up a little bit. Where'd we go? Here it is. So we talked about sampling a little bit. None of this data here is sampled. All the data within the Analysis Hub is. And I believe that what they will be doing within the Analysis Hub is doing a lot of sampling, a lot of machine learning, a lot of kind of extrapolation of data that's here to create the most clear story that they can tell for those folks that haven't accepted cookies or have not agreed to be tracked and those types of things. So I do think that they are going to be introducing, as time goes on, even more advanced level extrapolation, sampling, machine learning, et cetera, that will make things more clear. But given the fact that we're kind of heading toward a cookieless world, the picture is still going to be like fuzzy. It's going to be like Monet, If I squint, I can see the lily pad. You know what I mean? So I hope that answers your question. I know it's not a good answer, but I think it's incomplete because the process to finalize this platform is also incomplete. But I have to think, and I've got a sneaky suspicion that the Chrome update and this they're both kind of heading toward the same path in terms of Google's responsible step, in my opinion, to allow people to kill cookies, but also their ability to make Google Analytics a viable platform for people to measure their marketing activities.
Another question was, Mike Wills asked, you mentioned about not crossing streams. What's the caution there?
So what that basically means is I don't necessarily think you should have within one property a web stream here and a web stream here, because they're in the same property. And the reason that there's a web stream and an iOS stream and an Android stream is because in time, it's not ready yet, but in time, Google Analytics 4 will allow for like cross-platform tracking. So like this person is on my app, this person is on my website,
right?
Which is awesome.
Well, that's what it seems like it is already. If they'll let you cross streams in there, it's easy to.
Yeah, and my clients don't really don't do a lot of app work, unfortunately. So I'm not quite sure how well that's working. But the caution there is, for each property, you get a web, you get an app, and you get Android, and that's it. So you can do cross-domain tracking with your one web stream. Just don't have like 18 web streams in one singular property, because it's going to mess up your data. Analytics 4 will have difficulty deciphering wait, is it for this web stream or that web stream? It should all just be in one singular web stream.
At what level do you think a site actually is going to benefit from changing to Google Analytics 4? I mean, a 15-page plumber's website that has a form and a phone number, maybe an appointment booking calendar. What, they are now being forced essentially by default, unless they just happen to go to advanced and look and see, they're not even going to have Universal Analytics 4.
I'm with you. I don't for that type of client, not much. But if you follow the money, that type of client doesn't mean much to Google anyway.
Well, that's just terrible. Yeah, but I guess it's
it's sad but true, right? So I think that they're doing this to compete with the Adobes of the world, like Adobe Analytics, which is all event-based anyway. What benefit would the 15-page plumber site get? Not much that I can tell so far. Especially if you are, going, sorry, let me back it up here real quick. If you're already doing, if you've already configured, like for your plumber site, if you're configured like phone calls and form submissions and like plumbing demo videos and scroll tracking on the plumbing problem diagnosis page or whatever it is, and you're utilizing this is fine. But I think what GA4 is forcing people to do is actually customize Google Analytics. So for that 15-page plumbing site, I don't know if, for example, they're already doing these types of things, which do require some baking from scratch, to use our cake analogy, right? GA4 kind of forces the hand of some of these folks to do a little bit more detailed analysis, whether they need it or not, or whether they utilize it or not.
It seemed to me when I played in it, if you're baking from scratch in Universal Analytics, at least you've got a cupboard and you can see all the ingredients and you can go, oh, I need flour, sugar, milk, whatever. But in GA4, it left me, and I admit it's been 6 weeks they've probably improved on, but it wasn't like setting up tags in Tag Manager where you've got pre-existing tags you can choose from.
For those of us that already have our crap together in GTM for Universal Analytics, it's only going to be a step primarily to recreate tags. The triggers that you're using now are the same ones. Don't change your triggers, just change the tags, if that makes sense. Because the trigger is the trigger no matter what. It's just how that data manifests in either Universal or GA4. If that makes sense. But it's a lot of it's kind of repeat, but I have to believe that every week, like I said, subscribe to these updates from from Google Analytics, wherever they are, these guys, because they're helpful. And there's a few guys online that you guys probably have been watching too, that are super smart with GA4 and already finding things that are extremely beneficial from a detail perspective.
And there's a question. Have filters changed? Somebody asked, Jennifer Garza asked, she said, I'm assuming we're still able to filter out specific traffic in GA4, right? How do you set that up for a data stream though? I work with healthcare clients and it's very important to be able to filter out traffic from within their own facility for employees and community visits.
For sure. I'm going to bring it up right now and show you guys.
Awesome.
Let's go here. So I'm in a different screen over here. Okay, I used a real estate example. We're going to use that same real estate company. These guys are like in Dallas. So in admin, it's my data stream. They don't have an iOS or Android, but they do have a web. So here's my stream details. I'm going to back up just because I did that pretty fast. So data streams, property level, then click into this guy right here. And then if you go more tag settings, here's where you define your IPs. So for your healthcare company, just pop in their IP right there.
That's not buried. How come you didn't catch that, Jennifer?
Yeah.
Oh. To not call it a filter anymore.
Speaking of which, I haven't seen it yet, but apparently they have a for some accounts, I haven't seen it yet for this real estate company. They do have another one of these where you can do referral exclusions. Some of you might be seeing some referrals from your own website because it's GA4s, they're changing the tires as they go down the road, 75 miles an hour, but you can do that. And then there's also, this is where you would do your cross domain tracking right here, configure your domain. So when I say one singular stream for the web, you might have your blog.shop.ww. Get them all in here, which I haven't done yet because this client only has one site. So,
well, I think that's the last question. That's the last one I see. Nobody's chatted back with me. Again, thank you very much. We really appreciate it, and I'm only sorry this wasn't a 2-hour scheduled.
Next time, yeah, next time we'll do it. I'm sure we're gonna learn much more about it too. I'm not taking any clients right now, any new clients, but if anybody has any questions, like there's my contact information. Feel free to give me a call or text me or email me. I'm happy to help as much as I can. So if there's questions that I can answer, don't be shy. You're not bugging me. Feel free to reach out.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Again, I'd like to thank our event sponsors. By the way, Garrett had a previous commitment and had to leave.
Oh.
And that's why I'm not Garrett. He thanks you. I'm sure he thanks you immensely. I chatted at him that I really wish I would have recorded his voice so I could say, and now here's Garrett, and give him that radio announcer closing. But thank you to our web sponsors, Web Ranking, Web4. Please do check out elevateoregon.org. That's our charity of choice for 2021. We just really started working with them and quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. They have a brand new website, and we're really hoping we can help them. Chris, thank you very much. And you can bet we'll be hitting you up again. One day we may all get to have a conference in person again. And at that time, we'd love to give you half a day.
This is how it goes. I typically do 6-hour deals.
Yeah, this is quite the topic to ask you to cover in 45 minutes. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. And also special thanks to Lauren Teague, who introduced me to you guys.
Oh, right.
She's from Portland. So thanks, Lauren. All right. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
See you.